Hey guys, how's it going? I'm getting everything set up here. I just wanted to go over some stuff and just a big thank you to everyone that has followed the channel, watched the videos. Everything's just kind of blowing up. Getting everything situated this week has been just absolutely bonkers, as I kind of expected. How's it going, Jess? Good to see you around, Jess. I know she's been in heck part of the channel and been popping around here since probably like 1,000 subs. So it's really cool to see her hang around for this long. And kind of wanted to go over a couple news items and some things that I'm doing as far as just changes I have going on and kind of future targets as far as channel content goes, because as you guys seen some this past week, I had a couple of videos just kind of go crazy, and then I've kind of been bouncing around a little bit, and I kind of like that. But I've really enjoyed making all these videos and having people actually enjoy and actually help people is really my main goal of this channel. So I'm just super happy. I didn't think we would get 50K. I think when I first started YouTube back in October of 2018, my entire goal was to achieve 1,000 subs in March. And then by the end of this year, I wanted to shoot for 5,000 subs. So the fact 50K and it's July, I'm just beside myself. So thank you guys so much for checking out the content, liking it, and then giving me feedback. There's been times where I've made a bad video or I was just wrong in a video, and having people call me out on it, I love that. I love that accountability that YouTube has, to where, if someone comes out here and BS's people, you're just going to get flamed in the comments. And I think that's a good thing. So I really love that. So I'm just super happy about everything, how it's gone. But as you've seen, I've still kept my daily video schedule, and I have gone to 2 days at my main job and 3 days YouTube is kind of what I've told everybody for June. What I didn't tell everybody was, as far as building the studio goes, I'm doing everything. So I'm building the framing, I'm building, doing all the electrical, sheetrock, mudding, painting, sanding, everything. So that's why this past month I've just been like, oh my god, because I'll literally, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I try to keep a work schedule. It's real important to have that consistency, and then I've been just kind of busting trying to get all this built. But the studio will be finished tomorrow. I just have flooring left. I just finished my primer coat out there, so I will do some finishing paint jobs and then do the flooring tomorrow. So that'll be amazing to get all that done. I can't wait to show you guys that studio. I have been trying to get pictures going as far as everything that's been happening with the studio. So you guys, I'm making a full video, so you guys will be able to see the whole start to finish. And I'll give you like a little preview of some of the pictures and stuff that I've taken over this past month that we've been building, which is fun. And then also kind of touch on a couple news items and why I kind of start, this past week's kind of been weird because I'm really trying to focus more on educational content. It's not very popular on YouTube because when you come out and you say a big opinion pieces, usually those drive views. So almost every YouTube channel targets opinion pieces or news articles because, one, they're super easy to do. You just read a news article and then give your take on it. But a lot of times I feel like YouTube channels get lost in that mix. And now that I'm actually able to get back into and dedicate a lot more time, because this whole past month, yes, I've been kind of full-time, but at the same time, all my extra time's been going to the studio build, that I'm actually going to be able to do some truly, I think, amazing educational content that I've been meaning to do. It's just educational content. I don't anticipate getting a whole bunch of views, but I think it's going to teach people just some amazing things, where these past month, I feel like I've been able to just kind of pick little things here and there. And I really wanted to do like a really big series and some other things really to kick this off. So that's what I'm doing. Arc Survival Evolution works on Linux. Yes, James, I believe it does. I think it's actually a native title, so I don't even think that's a Steam Play title. I remember seeing Arc Survival. I think I actually have it in my list here, but I believe it's native, so I think you'll be okay there. Open source VPN for Linux. Yeah, OpenVPN. I mean, that's what I use all the time. So even in business, when it comes to VPNs, I usually always go for open source, and OpenVPN's like a de facto standard, just because the encryption's really good and how you can set it up is just pretty amazing. So I absolutely love it. But yeah, just kind of want to do this fireside chat, so to speak. But let me show you guys some pictures real fast of the actual studio so you can kind of see what is going on here. Let me pull this up. Now, I showed some of this last time, and this was the actual space that I was like, hey, I'm going to just take this little piece of my garage and do it. So that's kind of what I thought for my main process. Whole bunch of crap just sitting over there. I was like, I'm going to clean it out. So I kind of made a Patreon video about that. And this was me back when I had my little beard. And this is my first day. But yeah, that was a fun little video. It's like I've been trying to keep all my patrons up to date and say, hey, this is what's going on, and make little videos here and there. And this was my first day of the clean out and then the framing. And I went ahead and removed that fixture because I wanted the wall to sit right under that joist. I went ahead and set that up, put this in, framed out the door, put it in. I wanted to have plenty of electrical, so I actually put a 220 volt 30 amp breaker in, and then I put two 15s. Now, one of the 15s actually shared, and one of the 15 amp 110 volt is actually dedicated to the space. So I did that for a couple reasons. One, I'm going to have probably like a window unit, and then I didn't want that interfering with any electronics. And then also I'm going to have a full rack with completely loaded up as well. I have all this. Finished out the framework a couple weeks back. I also had a kind of a crazy idea during the build that I said, hey, you know what? I don't want my computer by my recording equipment at all. I don't want my computer anywhere to be found. So what I ended up doing was putting HDMI and USB runs, about a 25-foot run. So all of the stuff I'm going to be doing is going to be all on my desk, but my computer and all the hardware is actually going to be sitting in the rack behind me. And that's actually going to be right here. And that was another update video. This was all the USB extensions. I went ahead and bought USB power things, which I actually put up in the attic here, and tied that in over here. So whenever you do more than about a 10 or 15 foot USB 3 extension, a lot of times it loses power, it loses strength, and it gets kind of finicky. And you'll see that like an Oculus, Vive, they all have them, and it's kind of an issue. So that's why I kind of do that and did this portion of it. And then also I had some speakers that somebody gave me. These were some 75 watt commercial speakers. So I thought, hey, why I'm building this room out, why not go ahead and put those in the ceiling? This is right after I got the sheetrock on. I started doing a little spray foam and some of the other stuff. That's me actually getting the sheetrock up. And then I went ahead and had some extra, so I went ahead and ripped out an existing wall, put some R13 behind there, and then I put R13 all on the outside and kind of put all that in. And then mudding day, the family kind of came out. My mother-in-law actually came out, helped mud a little bit, which was kind of cool. And we got all that mudded this past week. And then the sanding was just a complete mess. This is a fun video.
Second day of mudding, and
but this is me just dying of sweat after getting out of the attic.
R13 on the wall, R30 right above my head here. It's in Texas heat. It's about 90 to 95 to 100 degrees out there today, about 120 sitting in the attic. And I gotta say, I think I lost about 5-10 pounds, so that's pretty fantastic. And other than that, I'm a bit of a mess, but you can see speakers, lighting, and this is a radiant barrier OSB behind here. I had some leftover. I had some leftover OSB, which I'm putting on the outside here. So I went ahead and put one right here. I'm gonna go ahead and sand that down, mud it, probably do some type of texture. And then I also had a thing of sheetrock down here as well. With that sheetrock, I decided, hey, this exterior wall that was already there was already kind of had like holes and other stuff in it, and I knew there wasn't any.
Yeah, so this was in Texas heat. So when I did all the insulation, when I did R30 on this day. This is the R13 on the outside walls, which wasn't bad, but the R30 in the attic in Texas, it was about 95, and I was up there putting all that in, and that was brutal. I had to come down a couple times because I was getting a little lightheaded, so that's ain't no joke. But this is me finishing up all the mudding. Had all that done. I finished all the primer coat. I don't have any pictures of the primer coat today, but God, it was so much fun. I just love this. But yeah, oh man. Pop out chat here and catch up with you guys a little bit. Yeah, Jess, actually, that's what everyone says. Like, I show them everything that they've done, and they're like, man, this is one hell of a man cave. And it totally is. I can't wait to, I'll probably do a live stream when I'm setting up the rack once I get most of it all set up. But that's going to be Sunday as the move-in, which is pretty awesome. So, yeah. And as far as the ceiling speakers, yeah, the 75 watts is commercial. It's stereo sound, but it kind of jumps through speaker to speaker. So you can actually do a chain run to where you don't have to do home runs back to the receiver or amp. You can actually just chain it all the way through the speakers. So that's like the weird wattage. I mean, it's not normal, but again, they were free. So I thought, hey, why not throw them in? I'm in the United States. Who is gamer? Dallas, Texas, to be a little more precise. Hello from Russia. One day I'll make it out there. Yeah, so one thing I don't think anybody really tells you about YouTube, or just kind of like the general consensus of it and all the stuff going on, is it's a little weird, especially when you transition. Like, I've been working 40 to 50 hour work weeks since I was like 15 years old. So, and I'm 37 or so now. So, just to give you guys an idea. And it was really weird for me when I went to 2 days a week at my job and I was doing YouTube, because YouTube to me has always not really been a job per se. It's just been something I love, just fun. It's just so great making videos and having people enjoy them that it's just awesome. And I never really considered it a job. So it was really strange when I first cut over, and I still have like my wife and kids here. So it was very difficult during the day to do anything with that extra time. So that's why I've been out making the studio like feverishly. Like, most people are like, holy crap, you got all that done in a less than a month. And I'm like, well, yes, but that's having all that extra time to do it. So I don't consider it that fast, but at the same time, I can't wait till it's finished this week and to actually be moving into it. And once it's all set up, I don't even know what's going to happen. It's going to be, I don't even know what I'm going to do with myself. It's going to be some awesome stuff that's going to happen. And yes, I do need to do a new intro to my videos. I just haven't had any time yet. But yes, that's one of the very first things I'm going to do in the new studio for sure. And also probably a new logo as well. I don't particularly like my logo. My logo consisted of me finding a blue dot, and then I just took a CPU PNG file and then just blacked it out, tossed it on there, and I was like, okay, it's a CPU on a blue dot, and I just put Chris Titus Tech. That literally took me about 5 minutes to make, and I am not an artiste by any means, any stretch of the imagination. So my logo is a little crappy, and that's one of the next big things I'm going to be working on too. So I love it. Yeah, Australia. You know, it's funny. Like, I always stream, And Tracy, I have a lot of people like Digital Sparky, I think, is on here. I think he has a different YouTube name, but he's usually on most of my live streams too. And he's from Australia. And it's kind of cool to see around like 10, 11 o'clock at night. That's when I usually do my live streams on Twitch. And I'd get going on it. And then I'd realize that during the live streams, that's like prime time for Australia. So a lot of Australian, New Zealand, I get a lot of that on the live streams, which is cool. I really enjoy doing it. And I love the live streams, which I'll actually be able to live stream during the day now, which is going to be pretty insane too. I've only been able to do one live stream during the day in this entire channel's history. So I've been doing it almost for a full year now, and I still have only done one live stream during the day, which it was very, very successful. That was the whole Debian live stream, if you guys remember that, that debacle, which was fun. Yeah, I've been waiting on the new logo and intro since forever. Yeah, me too. uh, is there a way to dual boot my PC? I have Manjaro installed already. I want to play a game and I don't want to reinstall Manjaro. Yeah, it depends. Like the best way to dual boot Dead Capier is to have a secondary hard drive. You can do it on one hard drive, but it's very cumbersome because Windows will update whenever a feature update gets pushed out. Usually boot MGR, which is Windows Boot Manager, it'll take back over that specific hard drive and overwrite Grub. So I actually am making a video about Grub for Win, which is a replacement for boot MGR, but it's a Windows run program that puts Grub on Windows partitions, and that way you can easily select between Windows and Linux. And I think it's Grub 2 Win is the actual name. I can actually look it up here, but it's actually pretty cool. It's not like crazy popular, and I'll put it in chat so you guys can actually check it out. It's a SourceForge project. But yeah, Grub 2 Win's good. Check that out. If you have problems booting back into a Linux install after you've installed it, Grub 2 Win can actually get that back for you. I think it's a good alternative. That way you can control your bootloader from it. Another option is to like EasyBCD, I think is one of them, and I think there's a free version of that. I know the later versions they've charged for, but you can also control the boot MGR or the boot manager from Windows using it. I like Grub because you can make it look really pretty. Dual boot, virtual machine for Windows. Yes, most people don't appreciate virtual machines enough. And when I'm at my job, my daily driver, there's still some stuff I need Windows for because like my main gig is also working for a law firm. And when it comes to that, there's certain things law firms need, and most of it is deals with electronic discovery and heavy reliance on Adobe PDFs. So that's kind of why I do that. But now, as far as the daily driver goes, Debian testing, I found to be very old. Like there's Debian, and Debian testing was like Debian testing or Buster. Now it's back to testing, and it's actually getting more up to date. But when I was on testing, it was a couple months before it was almost frozen because of the Buster release. So it was just so stale to me, and it just felt like the packages were really old. So I'm actually on Debian SID right now instead of testing, which SID has been great. I mean, if you're used to Arch and you want to go to Debian, Debian SID's probably the next best thing. So I love it. LibreOffice Online in a Nextcloud setting to replace Google Docs. Parf. I need to check that out. However, I do have Nextcloud, and I use Nextcloud. Actually, I have a video in the queue for my switch from Dropbox to Nextcloud, because I'm really using my Nextcloud server more and more, and I'm leaning more on that. I just wanted to finish this whole move before really making the entire leap and shutting down my Dropbox altogether. Because my Dropbox, I have almost 60-something referrals, so I have almost infinite space, and they've slowly been chipping away at, hey, I helped build their platform for the most part, right? And they just don't appreciate any of those people that have done all that for them, and all those referrals. They're just kind of kicking us in the teeth by saying, hey, you can only use 3 devices, and there's all these other like restrictions Dropbox has been putting on them. So I'm kicking Dropbox to the curb and going full Nextcloud. Everything's going to be a local, and I will be doing a cloud backup using Backblaze, which is about $5 a month. Maybe even less than that. If you do B2B, you can use the Linux version of it. It's a business version of Backblaze, and you can push all the data that you have. And just to give you guys an idea of how much that costs, I have a client where we're pushing probably about 300 gigs syncing every night. And then that's just like the VMs, and then also syncing the actual file shares, which has over 1 million files. And syncing all that up there, in all total, it's around 1.5 terabytes of synced cloud storage, and it's all encrypted. That runs about $5 a month. That's how much they charge us, which is crazy. I mean, they should charge way more than that, but it's great service. I absolutely love it. So that's what I'll do for my Dropbox. So I don't even think I'll probably pay $5. I'll probably end up paying a couple bucks for it a month, and I'll be well worth having everything local, which is awesome. Giannis asks, was your latest video on the NT password resetter supposed to scare Windows user on how bad their security is? I had a good laugh. Kinda. Yeah, it's the funny thing about that is that tool is from NT era. So it's actually from the late 90s, early 2000s when it was developed. And it still works today on Windows 10. That tells you they haven't really done much. Like when it comes to Linux releases, major things change. It's really amazing. Like the whole operating system is evolving. Better things are happening. Like I saw an article today where Steam is releasing new drivers or a new compiler, I think, to process frame rates and things like that. I forget the exact name of it, but they were actually to get about a 20% increase over Windows gaming on certain games using Steam Play. So this is direct DXVK translation that actually gets more frames in Linux than it does in Windows. It's the first time that's happened, so it's a pretty big deal, and I'll probably make a video about it, but that's pretty damn big. And the thing about Windows is it's never really changed. It's just pretty. It's just really pretty, and everyone's used to it. And that's the thing, is what Windows has, but they just are destroying their user base. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is just kind of orient all this educational content on the channel to help everyone. Like all these Windows users are just going to get orphaned, because you look at the latest news articles about like Windows 7 and telemetry, which that's kind of blown out of proportion really, because Microsoft actually added telemetry to Windows 7 back in 2011 and 2012, I think, somewhere in that time frame. And when they added that, they've slowly rolled in telemetry throughout. There's been somewhere around probably 15 to 20 patches to Windows 7 that does some form of telemetry, just to give everybody an idea. So people that say I'm on Windows 7, I don't have any telemetry, I'm like, no, you got telemetry, bro. Everyone has it to some certain degree, especially in Windows. And that's why I kind of came out so hard against like Linux Mint, or not Linux Mint, but Clear Linux, and those types of people that do a lot of telemetry, and same with Ubuntu. Oh, thanks for the super chat, man. That's awesome. You've had a lot of success with Linux gaming, because it's always mixed bag. Some people have certain needs, and I understand they can't fully transition. And hey, that's cool. Favorite VR game is Beat Saber, far and away. It's the only VR game that I actually came back to time and time again after a month. Also, like Fallout 4 and Skyrim, kind of cool. I'll still pull them up every once in a great while, but it's been months since I've been able to do that, and I have to, boot back into Windows for that one, and I'm just like, I don't want to mess around with it. So, hey. OneNote or Evernote? Neither. I'm not a big fan of OneNote or Evernote. I used both. Evernote, the little elephant with the green icon. I used it for about a year, and it's a fine product. I just didn't really like it that much. I'm really in the market for a new note-taking software, and most of the Linux offerings are a little substandard. So I'm still looking for something that just grabs me on my notes. Right now I'm using Google Keep, which sucks. I'm not advocating for that at all. It's just, that's what I've been using, and I just haven't found anything to switch off that. Morning, Zabber. Steam Gaming is seamless. I learned how to do it because of your channel. Steam Gaming is awesome. And also Lutris. Lutris.net is amazing too. So if you haven't checked out Lutris, for the stuff that's not on Steam, get it on Lutris and just pulling up games and hitting install. That's pretty amazing. Like, that's even a better experience than Windows in almost every instance, especially when you get to older games. Like when I made that video on Fallout 3, I was like a direct shot at Windows users saying, hey, you want to play Fallout 3 on Windows? It's horrible. It's just crap getting it working on Linux. It works better, it's more stable, and it actually installs and plays relatively easy compared to doing it on Windows, which is kind of funny because it's meant for Windows. And there's a lot of stuff like that coming out, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, OneNote, I don't know what it is about OneNote. I absolutely despise it. I think it's a lot of the integration with SkyDrive, or it's actually OneDrive now. And OneDrive has burned me a couple times, and that's why I'm always kind of snarky when I talk about OneDrive and how much I dislike it. But I understand a lot of people use it because they have like Office 365 and other things, and it's just this big bundled package where they give you a terabyte of cloud storage for free. But even with all that storage, I'm just like, I'm not using OneDrive. You just can't make me use OneDrive, and that's why I don't at all, by any means. Solus, I still haven't actually got up, and you haven't ever said anything. I've never said anything bad about Solus, just because I can appreciate a distribution that is based off their own kernel. Like it's directly from the Linux kernel and made into Solus. So that's kind of cool about Solus. Like, a lot of people are like, hey, check out my distribution. I get probably 10 emails a day about checking out distributions. And a lot of times I'll pull up that distribution. I'm like, yeah, it's just a fork of this other one. And forks of forks is just a deal breaker for me. So if it's a fork of a fork of a fork, I'm like, I'm done. There's so much problems with that because it's relying on this package and this distribution's relying on this one. And I can't do it. So that's why I don't really cover very many distributions, because I'm like, hey, Debian, Fedora, Arch. I mean, that's really what I preach when it comes to Linux distributions. But Pop! OS and Linux Mint, I think, are perfect for beginners because it's a much more friendly user experience, even though it's based off Ubuntu. They've done a lot of good things and stripped out a lot of that Ubuntu crap that I didn't like. Which, fun fact, Ubuntu actually, I think Ubuntu podcast or something, they were flaming me pretty hard on Twitter, and I had to get on there and shoot a couple messages back. Nothing bad. It wasn't anything. I was pretty respectful, but at the same time, I was just like, man, that's just wrong. But I get it. A lot of people, just say a crazy opinion just to say an opinion, and I think it's important to back up everything that you can with facts and say, this is why I believe what I believe. And if you can do that, then by all means, that's awesome. And that's whenever I give an opinion piece, I say, I have this opinion, and I have this opinion because of this, this, and this, and I try and show the actual evidence. And I'm getting better about that whenever I do make an opinion piece, to actually show what I'm basing that opinion on, show the news articles, give those sources and references. And too many people don't do that. I think too many people just get on YouTube and just blow an opinion piece and say, hey, this thing sucks because I feel like that. Or, something like that. It's just not well thought out. And that's why whenever I give an opinion piece, I say, hey, this is controversial. I know it's going to piss some people off, but at the same time, I think everyone needs to hear this point of view because I just don't hear it represented in the community. Now, if someone comes out and like 10 YouTubers come out and say something, I have that exact same opinion, I feel like I don't bring anything new to the table. I don't inspire anybody to think a different way. It's not worth me even saying it. So that's why I don't cover very many news articles, because I feel like there's so many people already covering that stuff. So it's only when something slips through the cracks and I just don't see it and I feel like it's a misrepresented portion of the population. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a video about this. But that's one thing, like I said at the start of the video, is I try to get away from doing the news pieces and opinion pieces so much, just because it's such an easy trap. When you do YouTube and you're making videos, it's such an easy video to make because you're just reading an article and giving your feedback on it. And as tempting as that is, and it's okay to do every once in a while, I don't want to get into where that's all I'm doing, because it feels like you're getting away from your roots and you just start to get disconnected from your audience. And really what I get joy out of on YouTube is teaching people things and having you, the viewer, go, hey, I've actually got in here, I learned something new, I'm able to use my computer a completely different way now, and that's awesome. Or at least give you options so you don't feel trapped on, hey, I have to use Windows because of this. I can say, hey, you can still use Windows, you can use it this way, and then switch over to Linux for this, and get you comfortable getting outside of that comfort zone and learning something new. That's, I think, anytime someone says, hey, I learned this new, or I tried something new, I'm like, that's awesome, because I watched one of your videos. I'm like, man, that's like, gives me a high for the day. Just makes my day every time. But yeah. Icon themes. TLG's bad at Adwada, or however you say that. I don't know why. I don't even know what theme I'm on, actually. I'm curious now that you say that, because I think I'm on like an OS X theme or some crap. God, I hope not. Let's see what I'm on. Mojave. Yeah, I'm on OS X. I'm using an Apple theme. Well, that's embarrassing. Let's use Breeze Dark. Yeah. Let's change my icons around a little here, guys. I didn't realize I was using OS X after after Jess was knocking Gardner for using Adwada. I'm sitting over here using Apple icons. God bless. It's horrible. I don't even like Apple. Oh. If you're gonna install Windows LTSC, it's still dangerous to install on the same drive as I have Manjaro installed. Yes, it's still dangerous to install on that drive, just because, once you get it all up and going and dual booting, it's fine. It's not so much dangerous. It's just Windows, whenever it does a feature update, which even the long-term service branch will update a feature update. Eventually it'll kick you through where you're going to update. And when that feature update rolls through, typically it'll override Grub, and then you have to reinstall Grub and recover your Linux. And some people freak out and go, oh crap, I have some stuff on Linux, and then they can't access it from Windows. And that's why I'm like, it's kind of a pain. Yes, you can manage it if you're pretty proficient, but at the same time, it kind of sucks. So that's why I say, hey, use 2 drives, and then from the 2 hard drives, you can, let's say something messes up on a bootloader, you can just hit your boot option and then boot to one of the drives using your BIOS and fix it that way. So, I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but anytime someone's dual booting, when I still dual boot here, and that's what I do, is I have actually like 5 drives in my system, but oh well, I just hoard them. Try Modern Theme by Oxygen Desktop. Yeah, I need to actually switch to a dark theme. I usually use Arc Dark for most of my theming. I think that's what I'm actually on right now. I just switched some stuff over. Yeah, right now I'm using Debian 10. So a lot of people ask that question, what are you using? And I actually think at the very start of the year, if you look at my old Debian videos, this was actually a specific video about Debian. It was a whole challenge, 1 year Debian challenge, which I've done 6 months of Debian now. I absolutely love, or actually 7 months of Debian, something like that, over a half a year. And it's so solid. It's just so reliable, which is awesome for this Debian. But I do miss Arch a little bit because in Arch, I feel like I got a little bit better gaming performance just because the packages were just a little newer. Everything ran just a little bit better because they were on a newer version. But at the same time, Arch has a lot of update issues as far as it's a rolling release, so stuff can break, where Debian has literally been 6 months of nothing breaking. It's just so darn reliable. So there's the trade-off, between Arch and Debian. Everyone always asks which is best, and I'm always like, it just depends. If you want something rock solid that'll never change and it'll just run no matter what, I'd say Arch, or I'm sorry, not Arch, Debian, and then Fedora probably as a second place to that. Both of those are pretty good. I really, really like Fedora and Debian for stability. And then obviously for bleeding edge stuff, Arch just takes the cake. It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Hey Chris, do you have any idea how I can install Linux OS on a Toshiba laptop with a dead AMD dedicated GPU? Every time I try, the install freezes. Man, Ryo, that's a difficult task. I would say check out, you can do it, but how you need to do it is, one, see if you can disable the GPU in the BIOS first. Obviously, if you can turn it off at a hard level, good, but you probably can't. Two, look at VFIO pass-through, and there's something called blacklisting in Linux. And what you can do is blacklist the hardware ID for the dedicated AMD GPU. And what that does is it forces it to use the integrated graphics instead of the dedicated graphics. If that's a dead GPU, you can still totally use that laptop. However, you have to do all this in terminal, and that can be a little cumbersome for a new user, but it's totally doable. You can totally blacklist certain hardware so Linux never uses it. When I did my PCI pass-through video series, that's exactly what we're doing. We're saying here's a dedicated GPU, but we don't want Linux to use it. We want that entire GPU to go to the virtual machine so we can play our games natively or near natively in the actual virtual machine. So the same thing can apply to what you're doing. That issue, Ryo, of the dedicated GPU being bad, you can actually go in there and blacklist that GPU, and Linux won't even look at it after you blacklist it. So pretty awesome stuff. I love Linux because anything's up in the air. You can do anything with it. It's great. You can change the operating system to fundamentally work differently, which is amazing. Absolutely love it. Edwin, Debian Sid, best of both worlds. Hey, that's what I'm running right now, Edwin. And like I said, that's been 6 months of Debian Sid. I think I did Sid 2 months in, and then I've been running Sid ever since, and it's been so rock solid. It's like a rolling release of Debian almost, but not quite. I mean, I do have a personal kernel on there. I had to add a repository because I still wanted the latest kernel updates on Debian Sid, which you don't get. You just get a little newer packages. So definitely add the repo so you can get the newer kernel, and you also get the newer packages and still run Debian, which is pretty cool. You should try out MX Linux and take a look at Trisquil. I'll check it out. I've been meaning to check out MX Linux for a while. I just haven't got around to it. One of these days I will. Sam Ben, thanks for the super chat, man. How well Linux works in Hyper-V in Windows 10 Pro? Works good. I've done it a whole bunch. So Hyper-V is damn near bare metal hypervisor. So it's used in a lot of data centers. Back in the day, it was used for saving a lot of money on VMware. Now there's a lot more options, so Hyper-V hasn't been updated and hadn't really kept up with the time so much. They still have some really cool stuff, like dynamic memory, where they can actually slide the memory a little bit easier than like a VMware or even Zen server for some Citrix. Those are the other hypervisors that businesses use. So when it comes to Hyper-V, yeah, Linux works just fine. You have no issues there. Currently trying to install Warframe on Linux Mint, and it has been on my terminal since yesterday afternoon. Ooh, guy from the internet. I'm sorry, man. That sucks. I actually didn't have any problem. Now, Warframe works a little differently. Are you using the standalone launcher, guy from the internet, or are you using Steam? Because I highly recommend you either switch out to the other one, whichever one works best for you. So, you know, I like Warframe standalone launcher. It's a little hacky almost when you're first starting because it launches its own script and updates kind of a weird way, but I like the standalone launcher for Warframe. However, the Steam one also worked for me. I installed Steam and launched Warframe from it, and it works pretty darn good. So I'd say if it's been going since yesterday afternoon, unless you're on a 56K modem, man, I think I'd give up that whole thing. What's your go-to beer? I have really bad heartburn, so that's like one thing about like I have this idea that I think a lot of people on YouTube think I'm an alcoholic because of past cats are making noise. Because of past live streams, and that's not true at all. I actually rarely drink because I have really, really bad acid reflux from the doctor and stuff. So I've done a lot of things for it, but at the end of the day, I have actually a lot of ulcers and actual hiatal hernia, so I can't actually drink very much, especially beer. But when I do drink beer, it has to be a light beer, otherwise, yeah, bad things. I'm breathing fire for the rest of the night. Yeah, I probably will take part building a new distro at one point in time. I actually, one of the very first things, about 2 or 3 months into starting YouTube, I actually had an offer from a publishing company to do a tutorial series on Linux kernel development because they couldn't find anybody to articulate much of the knowledge to what it takes to build the kernel and actually develop drivers and things like that for actual Linux kernel development into video. So they're having a lot of issues, and it was actually a company, a rather big company. They're worldwide, but they were out of the UK, and the contract they sent me for the job was, let's just say, not that great, and it wasn't a whole bunch of money, and I was just like, yeah, it's probably not worth my time, especially with YouTube and all that. It would take away from YouTube, and at the time, it's just been my driving passion for the past 6 to 7 months. So that's why I've been doing YouTube, is because I just love it, and it just gets me excited making tutorial videos and just kind of sharing it with the world. And that's kind of, why I turn that down as well. But do you have a hypervisor videos on your channel? Yes, I do. I really love XCP-NG, and I'll actually get you the link here. It's really awesome. This right here is possibly the best hypervisor out there that is free. So what XCP-NG is it's really, really cool. It's a bare metal hypervisor, much like VMware or Hyper-V or Zen server from Citrix. But what XCP-NG it's a spin-off, actual fork of Zen server, but Zen server started locking certain features behind a paywall, and XCP-NG is an open source project that basically took all of that code from Zen server and morphed it into XCP-NG. So you have enterprise grade hypervisor that's completely free, completely open source, and anybody can use it. So I literally could build a data center for $1 billion company with this hypervisor completely free. That's pretty amazing. I mean, just that alone. So if you're really looking at like a bare metal hypervisor and you really want to tinker, XCP-NG is awesome. I absolutely love it. Thanks for the super chat, The Ultimate. I found you trying to fight Windows bloat and privacy invasions. I decided to give Linux a go after watching your vids. 1 month, Windows free now, and I'm having so much fun. Man, that's good to hear, man. It's awesome. That's exactly kind of the same story I had, except I wasn't quite happy at 30 days. I was like on the fence. I was like, I love this, but I absolutely hate this. I miss this. And it really took me, I think, almost 2 to 3 months before I really, really became comfortable with Linux and really started loving it. Just because I've used Windows all my life, and Linux is just so new to me. But as I learned more and more, like every single day, I learned something new about Linux. Like I look at my videos from 2 months ago, and I'm like, ugh, it's almost cringy to me because I feel like I could have done a better job explaining it. And as I learn more and more, I feel like I'm going to help a lot more people transition to Linux and do a lot better job explaining some of the more complex topics that are really hard to tackle. And I'm just looking forward to this next month because of that. What do you think about the Librem 5 phone? Well, actual Purism was my actual sponsor for June. They sponsored 10 of my videos. Actually, I think I maybe even a few more than that. So I'm gonna get a Librem 5 phone one way or another, and I am absolutely going to try that out. I love to see a competitor between Android and Apple, and I just can't wait to see that actual interaction and see if I can actually drop my Google phone. I have a Google Pixel actually right here, and I can't wait to try and drop that phone and do just the Librem 5 and see what happens. It's going to make some awesome video content, and also I'm looking forward to actually having privacy back on my cell phone because nobody has privacy on their cell phone these days. Thanks for the super chat, Frank. You're lucky. It took me 8 years to ditch Windows. Yikes. Yikes, man. That's a long time. For me, I just never really considered Linux a desktop environment because of when I first tried Linux desktop environment, I think about 2010 or so, I actually loaded it up and I was just like, this is cool, I guess, but it doesn't have my games, and I just drop it. So when Steam Play came out, that was really the game changer for me. That's when I was like, hey, gaming on Linux is happening, and every single month something huge drops about Linux and its future and gaming on it. I literally think here in 2-3 years, we're going to see a massive change and so many more people gaming on Linux just because of all the stuff that's happening on the platform. And the gaming companies that just have completely ignored Linux are the ones going to be left in the dust. How you start on your 1 month on Vim. Yeah, SEO, when it comes to Vim, or V, it just depends on what you got going on. V is so powerful, but very difficult to learn. Like, it's very intuitive once you learn all the syntax and the keys. That's why so many vets love Vim or love V. And really, it's that breaking in period. And I haven't really gotten past it. I'm not very fluent in V. And also I find for tutorial videos, it's better to use Nano because most users, especially new users, are far more familiar with Nano. But V has some really, really cool features, like the cut and paste and actually splitting the screen, going out and grabbing something from terminal and then coming right back into it and then just pasting it right into your V session or Vim session. Man, that's something else. And I need to learn a lot more about Vim for sure. I'll tell you what. I love this one. APT greater than Pacman, greater than DNF. Don't know about Zipper. Actually, so this is the funny thing. I love Zipper. It's the OpenSUSE package manager. If you haven't ever used it, it's actually pretty intuitive. The syntax is very straightforward, so I absolutely love that. But I don't really like Pacman that much. APT, I also don't like. I like it a little bit better than Pacman. And DNF is actually one of my top ones. Zipper actually probably would take the top spot. So Zipper and DNF are actually one of my favorite package managers. Funny enough, I don't really like the distros that much for what I do on the desktop, but the package manager I think is quite nice actually. And yeah, Nano's still cool. It just doesn't have that flair. Like, you're not gonna make a shirt that says, "Hey, I use Nano." You're gonna make a shirt that says, "I use Vim," because you get mad rep for that. Oh man. How secure is Linux exactly? So legit, I'll answer that question for you. It's most businesses run on RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or a variant of it. It's a secure kernel, and all this kernel's code is actually analyzed by industry experts. So it's extremely secure because you have tons of peer review. Now, Windows always gets knocked for being extremely insecure because one, they have all this whole bunch of compatibility layers and old code that hasn't been peer reviewed. It's all closed source. They've actively basically cooperated with many government agencies and opened up back doors and all kinds of stuff. So don't get me started on how insecure and fundamentally flawed Windows is, because I've already made a bunch of videos. You can look up, I think I actually made a video about the 3 fundamental Windows flaws and why it will always just be horrible for security. But as far as Linux goes, it can be extremely secure. However, it depends on who sets it up. At the same time, someone can easily mess with the sudoers file and then open up the whole system to where you just type in, sudo space, whatever you want to do, and it doesn't even prompt for a password. So you can do a lot of things to make Linux insecure, but the key to that is you're making Linux insecure. By default, Linux is really secure, and depending on the distro you choose, it's even more secure. There's security-based distros out there that have security at its forefront. That's the whole purpose of the distribution. So definitely check it out. If you haven't messed out and you're really looking for security and even anonymity. That's a hard word to say. Anonymity. There we go. Nailed it. Yeah, definitely check out like Tails. Tails would probably be my go-to for that type of thing. I personally like to use like a Raspberry Pi for shell, and you can actually do like very lightweight browsers on it, like Midori. And you can have an always-on VPN going through it. I use private internet access for mine, but you can choose whichever one you're comfortable with. And then you always have that established on that black box. So let's say you wanted to launch a secure browser at any time to do whatever that you don't want to be seen or so much on the internet. Most people use it for torrents and those types of things. And you just launch a browser, you browse to whatever site it is, and when you launch that browser, you can do it through what's called X11. And that is a way to basically natively pull through just that one little browser in a tunnel and launch it on your main box. So it almost is like an application on your desktop, but it uses that secure connection on a completely separate box. It's kind of a cool little thing. I thought about making a video on that, but I don't know how many people would like that video, and I try to think of a good way to present that in a way to where YouTube doesn't completely kill me. I definitely can't mention torrents, that's for sure. It's a good way to get your video demonetized and just completely shot into a blacklist. Sam Ben, do you think installing Linux Mint or Hyper-V on Windows Pro is a good way to start for a newbie, or should I dual boot? I think installing it through a hypervisor is a good idea, Sam. Messing around in a virtual machine is always the safest thing when going to the unknown, and then you can kind of know what to expect and then go to a dual boot and then kind of mess around with the dual boot. There's going to be some stuff you're going to go back to Windows for, and then you're going to go back to Linux for because you like these things. And that's what it is that yin and yang, and then eventually you're going to go, I'm sick of this Windows stuff, I'm going to go to Linux. And that's usually the gradual progression. Those people that say magically people switch to Linux overnight is just simply not true, unless you're like a grandma and you just need your web browser to work. And then by all means, switch to Linux right away and just do Linux all the way, because web browsing on Linux is far more secure than web browsing on Windows. So there have been instances where I've pushed users, and like my mother-in-law, for instance, I pushed her to Linux just because she kept getting infected and installing just crazy add-ons. So that's why that progression exists. Appreciate the super chat, Matthew. That's awesome. Tor Emule Linux USB stick. uh, yeah, no comment. Raspberry Pi 4 video. Yes. So I actually have I have like a couple Raspberry Pi 3s laying around here. I use them for different things, like RetroPie is probably my favorite use of the Raspberry Pi. And then there's some other stuff like Sick Chill, if people know what that is. I'm not saying I personally use it, but it's definitely a cool project if you don't have TV or anything. That is pretty darn awesome. So I love it. Hyper-V has bad graphics acceleration. Don't try desktop Linux. Through that, try VMware Player. That's a good point, Frank. You can also use VirtualBox. VirtualBox a lot of times has decent graphics acceleration as well. Although sometimes it can be a little more troublesome to configure. Just depends on the user. But if you have problems with VMware Player, you can always try VirtualBox. It's free too. Chris, I really need help. Your video about Windows getting worse freaked me out. My son got his first Windows laptop for school today. How can I tweak Windows now? Well, I mean, I'm about to make a video about a simplistic Windows install. So here's the thing about Windows 10 and what I fundamentally hate about it is it just gradually gets worse over time. And that's Windows, even Windows 10 years ago, hell. Let's take Windows 7, probably everyone's most beloved version of Windows. Over time, Windows 7 slowed down, and that's mainly just because of the Windows registry. It'll get bloated, it'll run a little slower, so Windows over time just slows down. It's just how the operating system's fundamentally flawed. But I wouldn't get freaked out about it. I mean, I'm not saying, what in the heck is going on over there? Sorry, my cat was freaking out. I don't know what that was about. That's kind of weird. But anyways, over time, Windows 10, with its feature updates, it's kind of like an accelerated time capsule. So, like Windows 7 usually took a couple years to really slow down and turn to crap, and then you're like, okay, I'll format it and reload it. Windows 10, it seems like in 6 months, it travels about a period of time that 2 years worth of Windows 7 usage would have got you. So Windows 10 slowdowns much more faster, and it has all that bloatware and other stuff in it. So what you have to do is pretty much format and reinstall. I honestly prefer fresh installs over the free feature updates. Doing the actual feature updates is almost the same as doing an in-place upgrade. So if you've been using Windows for a while, think of it as doing an in-place upgrade from XP to 7, or XP to Vista, and Vista to 7, or 7 to 8, and not actually formatting your drive. So all these feature upgrades, there's just so much leftover stuff to where a minimal Windows 10 system should be about 10 gigs. And usually after the first feature update, that 10 gigs bloats up to about 40 or 50 gigs. It just depends. Mileage will vary on the user, of course, and the workstation. But my point is, I wouldn't worry about it. I would get that new laptop. I would format it with a fresh version. I'd debloat it. Using like the debloat script I actually made a video about. That's a good open source GitHub project that many people have used. You can also go ahead and minimize it by doing, I'm going to make a video on this, actually a custom Windows 7 install. It's called slipstreaming. If you do any IT, you can slipstream and modify the actual install image. So what I do in these is I'm extremely aggressive with it. So when I want to use Windows, like on my Streambox, which is what I'm using up here, to actually stream this video, because I have like an Elgato and some other stuff that just requires Windows. I go rip out everything. So I don't have Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer, Windows Defender. I mean, a lot of the actual baked in features I've ripped out before I actually installed Windows 10, because those are certain things that you can't uninstall after you've installed Windows 10. They're just baked in, and a lot of times you break your install by trying to uninstall them. So That's my view on it. And I'll make a video later this week about making a minimal Windows 10 install as well, because a lot of people seem to be interested in that. A lot of people have used the product NT Lite to do the slip streaming, and they cost money. I don't particularly like NT Lite anymore because NT Lite used to be free back in the 7 and I think even 8 days when I was using them for slip streaming. And then in Windows 10, they started charging money to rip out all these features. They still have a good interface, so I mean, it's not a bad product. I just didn't think it was worth $50 to $60. So what I ended up doing, I think I'm using Windows Toolkit now, or Win Toolkit, and I slipstream with that. It's a little bit more cumbersome because of how Windows package things in ESD files, where you have to unpack the ESD file into the correct WIM, and then from that WIM file, you slipstream it, you strip out all those features, and then everything is right with the world. So, but anyways, long story short, don't freak out too much. Plenty of solutions still. Even if you still have to use Windows, you can still use it. It's just anytime you do a feature update on Windows 10, you're in for heartache. Thanks for the super chat, Jamies. Will the new AMD GPUs and CPUs work on Linux? Yes. Yes, they will. And they already are. You can actually look at System 76. They actually have a new system with baked in. Those are the makers of Pop! OS, if you don't know. And Pop! OS uses Ryzen 3. So yeah, it's already out. It's already available and it already works. So there's your proof of concept. As far as the GPUs, I think the Radeon 7 or the 1700s. I haven't seen anything, but I have seen patch notes in kernels about that. Now, here's this thing that most people mess up about Linux. And it's so easy because, like I said, I've been a Windows user a lifetime, so I know exactly how a typical Windows user would think. How do I install my new drivers for this new piece of hardware on my Linux machine? And that's not how you should be thinking, because Linux itself fundamentally works differently from Windows. Windows, it's this crappy kernel, and then you're tacking on all these modules, all these drivers and things to make things work. That's how it works. In Windows 10, people think, oh, well, stuff just works better with it. Not really. It still works the same. It's just they've covered up kind of under, what happens underneath. On Windows 10, it still has that crappy kernel, and then they're still tacking on drivers. It's just they've made the process of tacking on drivers done through an online process like Windows Update. That's how Windows works. Everyone knew that, no surprise. But how Linux works is Linux itself is fundamentally different because it's one big kernel. All those drivers are baked in. So what's that mean for you that has the brand new GPU? It means you need a recent version of the Linux kernel. This is where distributions actually come into play. So as I mentioned earlier, I like Debian, I like Arch, I like Fedora or RHEL-based stuff. So you have all these different ones. If it's a Debian-based system, usually they run 6 months to a year behind on the kernel. So that means Ubuntu, KDE, Neon, all those other ones you see. It's just important to know that. So you might be better served if you're going with you definitely will be better served, not might, going with an Arch-based system. So like Manjaro, if you're not really Linux savvy, Manjaro would probably be your best bet. But there's other good Arch-based systems out there. I personally like Vanilla Arch. That's why I made that video about Archify and kind of using Vanilla Arch. But using that, it's a rolling release. It's always on the latest version of the kernel. So if you have new hardware, you really want to be on the bleeding edge. You want to be on that rolling release, because you're going to be seeing so much of this stuff. Thanks for the super chat. Klingon? I want to say Klingon, but it's not how you say it. CK. I'm just going to call you CK. Appreciate it, CK. But let's see here. Mira, the new Ryzen 3000 is having issues on newer distributions at the moment. Works fine on older stuff like Ubuntu 18.04. That is surprising. It's probably, so how the new Ryzen chipsets work, it could be something with updating the BIOS. Like when I was doing my micro PC, God, I'm going to butcher this because I can't think of the actual terminology. Let me see if I can't Google it. Here, let's pull it up. Ryzen firmware TPM. That's what it is. Let's see. So what happens a lot is people don't upgrade the TPM or this firmware that's baked into the BIOS or controlled on the motherboard. And yeah, this is, oh, no, trusted platform module. That's not it. Is it? That's not what I was talking about. Dang it. Ryzen. It was, come on, Wiki, don't fail me now. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's something with the firmware that you need to upgrade with it, because if it falls too far behind, you lose a lot of performance in comparison, and then when the newer drivers and stuff come out, it doesn't work quite right because you didn't upgrade your firmware or your actual BIOS. And that's so weird to say, because as a computer technician, I would never recommend people just willy-nilly upgrading their BIOSes, because upgrading BIOSes can brick your computer if you do it wrong or you grab the wrong version. However, upgrading your BIOS for a Ryzen processor is almost necessary because you gain so much in performance, a lot of updates and things like that. You can't take advantage of all of those increases without updating your BIOS. So it's weird, because I would never advocate anybody to update their BIOS, but when it comes to the Ryzen chipset, you almost have to update your BIOS to really get maximum performance. So that's probably where the Ryzen 3000 problem's really coming from. So I don't know. But yeah, this is problem comes with the 5.0 kernel, but it works fine in the 5.1. I'm sure they'll square all that away. It's just kind of a weird thing. No, it's not ray tracing or any of that. Ray tracing is totally an Nvidia deal, which I'm not really updating. Thank you, Zabber. Microcode updates. That's what I was going for. But it's definitely needed through the BIOS, and it's so weird because of that. DuckDuckGo. Charles Dean, yes. If you don't want to get tracked and you actually want unfiltered, unbiased search results, search with DuckDuckGo. Probably the most hilarious thing. Pop versus Fedora for gaming. I'd go Pop, just because Pop has so many built-in options, or options right out of the gate for new users, that Pop does a really good job with gaming. Just because all those customizations are already done for you, like eSync and a lot of the DXVK stuff. But like I said, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't matter that much, because you can tweak pretty much any Linux distro to game pretty darn good. Like when I said it earlier, where hey, Arch games a little bit better because the packages are a little newer. We're talking single-digit percentage returns here between Debian and Arch. It's a very, very personal preference. It's not like, hey, Debian's worse at gaming than Arch. No. It's very just a different feel, and it also depends on your configuration. Like if you're using older hardware, Debian and Arch are going to probably perform exactly the same. But that's just my opinion. Oh man, yeah, but microcode updates are definitely important, and to install them is nerve-wracking, to say the least. When I was doing the old stream computer, I think I was using a Ryzen 2200 Raven Ridge that has integrated graphics, actually a pretty solid computer, CPU. But I was using a first-gen Ryzen motherboard because I'm cheap, and I was using the Ryzen 2200, and it was such a pain because I had to do 4 BIOS updates. I couldn't just go from 1 to like 3.2. I had to go 1 to 1.6, 1.6 to like 2.1, and then slowly work my way up the major updates. But I had to read the guides very carefully to get all those microcode updates and get the BIOS up to date to take and recognize the Raven Ridge from the original Ryzen first gen, because the 2200 was Ryzen second gen, and yeah, that sucks. I don't ever recommend anybody doing that, but at the same time, I ended up saving like $100 by doing it, so that's why I ended up doing it. You can play WoW on Linux, David. Yes. Actually, I need to make a WoW video. As much as it's been, and I don't really play WoW anymore. I think I played it during the Lich King Gate days, when I had buddies on there that played with me a lot. That was a lot of fun, but I'll make a WoW video. I'll get on there. I think I get like a level 20 character for free or something. So I'll hop on there. That's awesome. But yeah, WoW plays just fine. A lot of Blizzard games play really darn good on Linux. So I like Diablo 3 plays native. WoW plays native. Pretty much all of them play native except for Destiny 2, which technically isn't a Blizzard game. That's actually an Activision game that uses the Blizzard launcher, and it's just a complete mess, much like the game itself. But Blizzard, Destiny 2's no-go for sure. IT career questions, $5. Congrats, Chris. Keep doing what you're doing and continue to help people. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I actually checked out his channel. He's actually a pretty good guy. Although I did disagree with IT career questions about college. We have differing opinions, which opinions are great. Just remember, you can differ a little bit. I personally never went to college, and I think there's still a strong... it depends on what country you're in, and it depends on how accessible college is for you. Some people would dump hundreds of thousands of dollars in America on college, and that is sometimes a mistake, especially if they don't know exactly what they're going with. So I know he made a video really in favor of college, and I think I made a video a while back kind of against college, but it's kind of neat to see the differing perspectives. But I still appreciate that opinion. I still always encourage different opinions and that type of thing. It's one of those things that help people grow. It's when you get, and this happens a lot, except especially in today's society, is when two people don't agree, they just ignore one person and then keep asking other people, or just going to outlets that is like an echo chamber, something that reinforces their existing beliefs. And I think I really like it when someone challenges my opinions and my beliefs to really go outside that, which is kind of fun. But but yeah, no, long story short was, yeah, in America, I actually ended up not going to college. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it could have been IT career questions, about if you want to get into executive management and those types of things. College can be extremely good for you, but again, it's such a weird thing because I've had such a different path. Like, I don't have a college degree. I ended up becoming IT director for a big company where I reported to a board of directors, and I could have easily gone through that path and hit into like a vice president position and got into that type of role. But it just depends on the person. Like for me, I saw that future and I saw, yes, I could make a ton of money probably doing that, but I would absolutely hate life because it's not something that I'm passionate about. And that's one thing that's important. As long as what you're passionate about is something, I'm not saying, hey, quit your job now because you're not passionate about it. You need bread on the table. You need food for sure. So I totally get it. But yeah, no, for the most part, management and above, you definitely, I could see that you need an actual college degree. Sleepy Eye Vince. Congrats, Chris. Been following your stream for a while, ever since you started chatting with Total OS today. Can't wait to see the new studio reveal. Thanks, man. Appreciate all the support and help. Yeah, I love that. And I can't wait to get back on and actually collab more with people, too. Like, I see IT Career Questions. I see Total OS today and Big Daddy Linux. They're always on there, too. I can't wait to actually have that open up. Like, tonight's stream actually almost didn't happen on time just because I have kids and other stuff. And this is you can't really see, but this is completely open. My house is completely open, so I have to have them actually in a room sleeping before I can actually record or live stream or anything. So it's always like 11 o'clock or 11 p.m. at night before I record any of my videos or do anything. And that's one of the big things about the studio that's just going to be so amazing is it's going to be crazy. I'm going to actually be recording and I'll actually not be up for like 12 hours. Because usually, or actually probably like 16 hours is usually what I'm up before I start hitting the record button because, you know, I don't sleep too much. So I can't wait to actually do more collabs with other creators, having more time during the day. I think my videos will be far more clear and concise and just more to the point. Because a lot of times I rewatch a video that I made and I'm just like, oh God, completely botched that. I should have totally said this, or I omitted certain facts that I thought I should have put in. And I think when I actually am able to do that in daylight, wow, it's going to be amazing. I think I'll be able to take it to the next level. But we'll see. The proof is in the pudding. I always say whether or not you can execute or not. A lot of people are all talk. And, you know, we'll see what happens. I can't wait. Oh. It's cats, not kids, Chris. No, the cats have still interviewed. Like, I think they interrupted this live stream a couple times tonight. They're fighting or something. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna see a whole lot of energy out of your videos. We'll see that, or it might be before I have my coffee and I just get on stream and I'm just like, So we'll see. It'll be interesting, to say the least. Oh. Yeah, IT career questions. That's actually what I did at the very beginning of the stream. I showed everybody it's actually in my garage, and that's where I'm doing it. But it's in Texas, so it has to be conditioned somewhat because I cannot record a video with it being 110 degrees in my garage. I think it was actually Paul's Hardware, and I think he's up to like 1 million subs now or something. And Paul's Hardware actually, he did it all in his garage, and all he did was like seal it off a little bit and just get a standing unit. And I'm gonna tell you right now, Paul probably doesn't live in Texas, or he's in an extremely shaded area if he is, because man, my garage, I put a standing unit, I turned it on just to test it out. It barely reduced the temperature by like 5 degrees, 10 degrees maybe. And I was like, oh my God, it's still 100 degrees in here. Oh, it's horrible. Tell us about LTSC. What do you want to know about long-term? I think it's a long-term service candidate. It's basically a way of getting a feature update about 2 years old. So I think LTSC is currently running on either 1709 or 1803 right now, and it stays on that for an extended period of time. So the average life cycle of a feature update for Windows 10 is 6 months, where in LTSC the average lifetime is usually about 2 years. So it runs considerably behind. It's far more stable, and it also has a lot of less bloat. You're not going to see Candy Crush pop up on it. So the reason why I don't actually do anything with that is just because most people don't have access to that. And if they do, it's a pirated piece of software. And that's one thing I just draw the line on is I can't do pirated Windows installs. I've seen too many times that a pirated Windows install has other stuff in it that's far worse than what Microsoft puts in it. So someone that goes out and torrents a Windows LTSC and then thinks they're on a great system, a lot of times there's something hidden in that ISO. So I don't ever recommend it. And yeah, that's why I'm just like, no. That's why I don't make too many videos about it either. Same with like Enterprise Edition, because you can do Enterprise Windows 10 and still don't have any of the bloat as well. So, you know, it's just one of those things. That's why I'm like, ugh. Hey, DT, how's it going, man? Thanks for stopping by. Funny thing is, I did use a pirated version, and I speak from experience on this. Windows 2000. So a lot of people, I guess, Windows ME is, you see a couple of YouTube videos pop up about ME, but ME was truly like this past one where I said Windows 10 kept getting worse. Windows ME was the epitome of that, because Windows ME was ridiculously bad, like really, really bad. Like it would blue screen and you'd put in some more updates and then it would just blue screen more. That's how bad ME was. And I think the whole team got fired, and they just took the NT team and rolled it into what they were doing and made this abomination that's XP. But I digress. Windows 2000 was like the best version of Windows because it was so rock solid. I loved it. So I couldn't afford it at the time. I was 17 years old. So I went and pirated Windows 2000. And what I found was a whole treasure trove of goodies in that pirated ISO, and not the good kind, the kind that just is a bunch of viruses and things like that. So definitely watch out when you torrent an ISO. Just don't do it. Honestly, I like getting the actual pure ISO and slipstreaming it when you can. So how fast is my internet? 100 megabits. So nothing too crazy, but 100 megabits I think is a good in between. I know Linus Tech Tips has 10,000 megabits. 10 GBs, man. That's crazy. I can't believe that. Yeah, so Hackintosh is actually on my to-do list. I should have that coming up here in the next month. Hackintosh actually, I have an Intel NUC that I have prepped for it, and I was going to actually do that because an Intel NUC runs about $300 or $400, and I've linked a bunch of times on the sites about doing all of the Hackintosh stuff, and I think it's like Tony. Let me link it. Let me link it. If you're really interested in Hackintosh, this guy is awesome. He makes a lot of build guides, and he's been a great resource for Hackintosh for more than a decade. I first started Hackintoshing. I think my first Hackintosh was Tiger, back when they moved from the PowerPC architecture to the x86 and Hackintoshes became a thing. So I was I think first year or two actually doing it. So, and I actually have a Mac OS cert, which I don't really tell people about because I think it was Tiger. So it's a 12-year-old Mac OS cert, which is pretty hilarious. Actually, I think it's longer. I think it's older than 12 years, but it's a really old cert. Linus Tech Tips makes $1 million a month. Good night. That's pretty ridiculous. I believe it though. I mean, the guy is spending money like it just grows on trees. Like his $100,000 red cameras. He has like 30 people working for him. He has this giant warehouse. He has a 10 gigabit line into his building. That's insane. Like, people don't understand when it comes to LTT. That guy has some severe overhead. Like, holy crap, from a business perspective, I look at his stuff and I'm like, good Lord, man, you have to be spending almost everything you're making with this much stuff. But I mean, if he's making $1 million a month, probably not. He is I think he is the biggest tech YouTuber, and I know his sponsor spots are definitely up. And he has like, out of those 30 people, I think 6 of them are sales teams. So he definitely does. So I'll tell you what. But overall, I mean, I can't hate on the guy. A lot of people are like, do you not like LTT? And my response is always, I only wish I started YouTube and just did what I'm doing today back when he did it. That's my only regret. I can't hate on the guy for making videos. The one thing most people don't understand about LTT is his content is definitely made for the masses. And yes, he is younger and there's some knowledge gaps there with some of his staff, but I'm not knocking him because he is extremely consistent, and that's a lot of hard work he's put in. A lot of people don't realize LTT has made a video, I think, every single day for the past decade. So he has thousands and thousands of videos to dig on. So from a YouTube and a business perspective, LTT is just killing it. From a tech perspective and knowledge and that type of stuff, Yeah, I'm not gonna go there. There's certain things I definitely looked at it and I was like, I need to make a video about that. So, and now I've gotten to the point where if I see a video that I think I could do better, I could actually make it and then see what happens. His production quality will always be far better than mine, so the knowledge in my video would have to be considerably better if I was actually looking at wanting to have a comparable video, because you just can't compete with a red camera, the staff, a lot of the setup, the scenes and stuff, which is cool. There's no real competition in YouTube. A lot of it is just it's all like if one person succeeds, you kind of succeed, kind of thing. That's the one thing about YouTube, which is kind of awesome too. So even though I say that, it's not really a competition. It's just fun. Yeah, Anthony is really great. He actually is one of the guy that's really pretty spot on. I really like Anthony in him talking about Linux. The one issue where a lot of that, I kind of threw a little shade in that little tangent I just went on, but it came from that video LTT did about a $70 old version of Linux that he bought for your grandma or whatever. And at the end of the video, Linus gets on screen and he holds the thumbnail. He's like, "It's $60 for this old version of Linux." Well, I could see a use for this, and I was like, "What?" I would just completely rip that company for doing that. That's just highway robbery. But that's where some of that shade comes from. But yeah, Anthony's great. I really like it. It's awesome. Chris, could you please recommend an LTS Linux distro for software development? Lab moving to Ubuntu doesn't feel right. Thanks for the congrats. Aslan, I'm not sure on the software development. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. They all have really good options. You can install and do Python and C++ on pretty much any Linux distro. Offhand, if you're mainly doing it, it just I'm always a big fan of Vanilla Debian if you're really wanting to jump into Linux, but I know that's a little more technical than some people want to actually mess with. So for that, it just depends. I say try out Fedora. Probably, you said Ubuntu doesn't feel right, so I'd say go ahead and just nix it. I would do Fedora next because Fedora has a different feel altogether with it, and it's more business oriented. So as far as compiling and that type of stuff, it can do all those things. So it's pretty amazing. So thanks for the sub there, Australia or AATV. Hey, I don't want to storm. What the hell, DT? Come on now. That's where I'm at. Chris, could you do a video on Linux firewall sometimes? Set up rules, block some apps. Okay, yeah, I can do that. I actually did. It wasn't really a firewall, but I could probably do a video over UFW, which is really an easy firewall, and kind of show you the ins and outs of UFW. I did IP tables firewall and setting up like SSH tar pitting, so you can really get in there and modify how your server would react. So it was mainly from a server level, but a lot of people probably want to use a firewall from a desktop level, and I really haven't approached that video. So I'll definitely hit up Linux firewall sometime. I'll actually pull up my list here and do that. Let me pull up my notes, add that Linux firewall UFW, because I'm always looking for new ideas, and my list is crazy long now, but at the same time, sometimes I just I don't have time to do that topic, so I can't quite tackle it, which is great. Well, that's true. Rain and cool weather does sound nice. And I'm in Dallas, so it's not like I'm sitting in Houston. So I'd be fine. That's for sure. Actually, that's what I'm using right here, CJ, is pfSense. Absolutely love pfSense. I went ahead and bought, I think it was PC Engines. They actually have dedicated hardware you can buy. It's like an ARM processor, or I think it's like a 4-core ARM processor or something like that. About 4 gigs of memory and a little built-in SD card that's has everything loaded. So not SD card, but it's not a PCMIe. It's I can't remember the name right now, but little built-in hard drive in there, and I've loaded pfSense on it. I've been running pfSense for probably 4 months, 4 or 5 months, something like that. I made a video. I probably could look back on that video when I was doing the networking and pfSense tutorial, because I made a whole video about using the PC Engines hardware, using your own hardware, and then loading it up and making your own router using pfSense, which I absolutely love. And I need to do more pfSense videos because I absolutely hope everyone gets away from, like, you know, your Netgears and TP-Link and Cisco and all. Cisco's not too bad, but Linksys and all those residential routers, they're such crap, and you get such poor performance out of them. A lot of people end up oversubscribing on their internet. They'll get like a 1 gig down or something like crazy and be paying all this money, and then they're using like a Nighthawk, a Netgear Nighthawk router or some crap like that. And I'm like, you're just killing it, you know? And a lot of times, like Spectrum and AT&T, they'll give you the crappiest gateway known to man, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's fine. And you can't even get the throughput. I think they've gotten sued many times over doing that. But yeah, ugh, horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yeah, so like you can use a Netgear and you can use Linksys and you can flash custom ROMs with them, but at the end of the day, the actual hardware itself is so underpowered when you could build your own hardware that has far better specs, far better throughput, just everything about it is better. So that's why I don't really care about flashing custom ROMs and stuff, mainly because it's a $50 router that's, you know, got practically nothing on it as far as memory and storage and all those types of things. I really like actually having almost a full-on computer for that type of stuff. Yeah, and you can even use an old computer. Like, you don't have to use, like, what I got is like a little tiny made in China hardware, basically a micro computer, really. And you can use a standard computer if you had the space, which I might actually transition this off to a full-blown computer in time. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, heck. Jeremy, I'm gonna make the Librem 5 video as soon as I get it in my hands. I'll give you first impressions, I'll give you pros and cons, which there's gonna be a lot of cons. I just know it. So I even though Purism has sponsored my videos in the past, I just want to tell you guys, when you have a brand new phone operating system, it's not gonna have all the features that we're so accustomed to. We're going from Apple and Android that has literally vetted out for 10 years, a whole decade, this operating system that does a whole variety of things. I just wondering how many of those features we'll have. We will be missing features. There will not be a one-to-one copy here. And if they achieve that, that's just impossible. I don't anticipate them achieving that. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up saying, hey, it's going to be just awesome. It's going to be better than Android. It's going to be better than Apple. Out of the gate, it's not. You're going to get the Librem 5 phone because of security and privacy, and we're going to see what features it has and what features it's missing, because that's what I'm more curious about more than anything. But if you're more concerned with privacy and security, you're probably going to want to use a Librem 5 just because you're so sick of being tracked by Google and Apple. So that's just it. And yes, I will definitely make the video, whole breakdown of the Librem 5 phone regardless. Hopefully I can get it before launch. But we'll see. It just depends on what Purism does. I really hope they send me an early copy because that would be sweet. Try using the original iPhone from the '07. It's rough. Actually, I had the original iPhone HSO, and guess what? I liked one feature about the original iPhone that was awesome. And what it was the whole thing was made out of aluminum. You could drop that thing, you could hit somebody over the head with it. I mean, it was a solid piece of aluminum. The original iPhone was actually, the body of it was constructed great. Now the phone itself, I didn't think it was very good. I thought it sucked, to be honest. It just looked really cool, and the body was full aluminum, which was awesome. My biggest gripe about iPhone 1 and 2 was it just had IMAP support, so you didn't have any Exchange, and most of the business world runs on Microsoft Exchange, and the original iPhones didn't have it, so it kind of was a non-starter, because that's what you used your phones for, especially back then, was mainly email. And apps and all that crap really didn't come to fruition for several more years. They're still saying Q3. A lot of people are saying it's going to get pushed back, but I haven't heard anything else other than Q3 for the Librem 5 release. So I'm really curious to see what happens there. Yeah, GFY. Ubuntu Touch was crap, but a cool concept. Yeah, I've heard exactly that. I never got my hands on a Ubuntu Touch, so I can't really comment directly on it. But I've heard the horror stories. Heck, the Librem 5 doesn't even have a full body yet, Rowan. If you look at the dev kit, it's like a board that protrudes from an actual LCD screen. So we don't even have the full-on body yet, actual seeing the prototype. So we'll see what happens when the prototype comes out as far as ugliness. Overall, from what I've seen from the pictures and the concept designs, I'm like, meh, it's a phone. Phone's a phone. Yeah, DistroTube's awesome, man. If you haven't checked him out, he has a little bit longer form content, really great with like terminal and things like that. So if you haven't, big shout out to DistroTube. I actually am a Patreon supporter of him too, because he's great. So if you haven't checked him out, he's a good, especially when it comes to Linux videos, just amazing. Make a video on building a distro. Actually, Who Is Gamer? I'm doing LFS or Linux from scratch. Probably next month. A lot of people wanted me to do a Gentoo build, and I actually did that on a Twitch live stream when it comes to the Gentoo build, and I was like, I was just like, I don't know about this. Mainly the compile times and stuff like that. I have a 16-thread system here. I thought it would just power right through the Gentoo build, but the compile times were still just, ugh. It was like 30 minutes to compile the kernel. It was just horrible. Absolutely hated it. So I'll probably end up doing Linux from scratch and just do that instead of Gentoo, just because Linux from scratch I think I could learn even more on. But Gentoo it was a fun project. I always recommend, if you really are a heavy tinkerer and you really want to get to the nuts and bolts of Linux itself, Gentoo does teach you a lot of really cool things. So I don't mind. Which is best Linux for gaming? I'm coming from Windows. Patrick, you're probably going to want to start with Pop! OS, just because they make a lot of the customizations and things that you need right out of the box. And then just know that the other distributions, if you see something else you're cool, you can change and switch to that or try it out. I always say load up some VMs, figure out what you're comfortable with. What about Level 1 Text and his channels about Linux? Level 1 Text is great. They're like one of the originators of really mainstream Linux content. So Wendell at Level 1 Text is extremely smart. I don't have anything bad to say about Wendell. He's a great dude, and hopefully one day I'll get to meet him and maybe even do a collab with him, because yeah, he was kind of the originators of a lot of the projects in Linux, and I think he was the very first one to do VFIO pass-through or PCI pass-through, and passing through the virtual machine as far as from a YouTube perspective, and showing that and showcasing it in a video, at least from what I saw, at least from a mainstream perspective. I know for a fact, because I remember seeing that. I was like, man, that's cool. So he's a good dude for sure. He doesn't make too much Linux content anymore, from what I've seen. Level 1 Tech's really slowed down on the Linux content and going more mainstream, which I get. I mean, most, like 80% of the population uses Windows, And that's why I kind of like to mix it up. I do a little Windows video, and then most of my content's geared around education and Linux. But I like to throw out those Windows stuff, like resetting Windows passwords and some of the opinion articles that I come out with Windows, mainly because I like to get those Windows users and say, hey, there's another option. And then they can choose. They can stay on Windows. I'm not going to hate on someone that wants to stay on Windows, but I just want to say, hey, you don't have to stick on Windows if you don't want to. Manjaro Architect is really good. You should do a tutorial. Fun fact, I actually, I'm going to link something in the chat so you guys can check this out. I actually have a published book on Amazon about Manjaro Architect. So if you actually go to Amazon.com, type Manjaro Architect. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, the complete Manjaro Architect installation guide. This is actually my very first published book on Amazon. I don't have any other books, so more are coming. I'm going to make more published work. This is just more of a proof of concept. But this was like this Kindle app that I went and did just an installation guide over Manjaro Architect. I actually made a video too about it as well, Jess. It's just kind of funny. Which I think I can, let me pull up the video too so you guys can see that. Because that's kind of cool to see. Let's see, Manjaro Architect. I did a video to complement it, and that's kind of one thing I wanted to do as I have more time, is develop written material on like full-on technology books. But any technology book I've read, I realize I'm kind of an outlier because I can read an entire one, absorb the knowledge, and move on. I feel like most people need that visual look through to really grasp and understand it. So when I'm going to be making like future books, this was just an installation guide. So it's only like, I think 20 or 30 pages. So not big at all. I just kind of break down the nuts and bolts of all the options in Manjaro Architect Edition. But I wanted to make it to where you could read a chapter, and then at the end, as you're learning things, you can actually click or just go ahead and copy the address into your address bar and see the entire video along with it. So I'll have complementary written and visual aids to go along, so you're able to learn pretty much anything. And that's where, when I have more time and I have the studio, I'm going to be able to do a lot more stuff like that, which is going to be pretty awesome. So here you go. You asked for the Manjaro architecture video. Here you go. I made this. When did I make this? Oh, this was January 18th, 2019 is when I made the Manjaro architect video. So that's my old camera and a lot of my old equipment. So, which my next equipment upgrade will probably be my webcam. Still using the old C920. It's where I started. I started my YouTube career on this guy. I love you. I love you, little $20 camera or $50 camera, whatever you are. Had it forever. Oh. Yeah, so next level YouTubing. But that's the whole thing about YouTube, is if you want to just go for views, like if I wanted to just become the next Linus Tech Tips or something like that, which, let's be honest, I mean, he's got 8 million subscribers. That's a long ways off. You have to make a lot of sensational content, and a lot of the content would go against a lot of the stuff I just don't want to do. Like, I'm going to take a shot here, but making a gaming PC out of a hot tub or something like that, that's not my style. It's not my thing. It's not who I am. And that's why LTT's always going to be like the king of tech YouTube, because he makes crap like that. I just can't bring myself to make content like that. And I get that because that appeals to everybody, but to me it's like, oh Lord. and I want to make educational content. I want to make something that people watch and they expand their mind, they learn something, they're able to do something they weren't able to do before they watched the video. Where a lot of the more sensational opinion pieces, the more sensational content, like what's it like to game on a 16K system or something like that. Nobody has $100,000 to blow on something like that. Well, there's people that have it to blow, but let's just say those videos are just meant for entertainment purposes only. And that's totally how you get to be mainstream. Me, I want to stick with the educational realm because I feel like educational realm, one, is far more rewarding to me, and I love making educational content. And also, as far as making money on views and that type of stuff. When it comes to AdSense, I don't know if you guys know, but educational content in AdSense, you're not really going to hit a home run. You're not going to be able to retire. You're not going to be able to support yourself or your family on just AdSense alone. So that's why just for educational content, I would be partnering with like making my own ebook and then like molding them into one so you could do a whole course type of thing too. So it'd be a way to make a livable wage and still do educational content on YouTube, which is what my main passion is. And I may actually mix in the occasional cat video because views. My favorite desktop environment is definitely KDE. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And I love XFCE as well. So like KDE, it comes with a lot of software and it's a little bloated. The actual source KDE is not bloated, but all the KDE package software like KWrite and all the stuff that comes with it bloats up the system a bit. So XFCE is a more minimalistic desktop environment that I can customize to look almost like KDE and get a really good feel. But KDE out of the box looks pretty darn good, where XFC out of the box looks ugly and it requires a lot more customization. But I don't mind customizing XFC. You can make any of the desktop environments really look great. It's just a matter of tweaking them. So you can make GNOME look like KDE if you wanted. You can make Mate. Well, actually, I really haven't messed with Mate or Cinnamon that much, so I can't really say much about them. But yeah, I really need to, branch out a little bit from KDE. I just found KDE and I absolutely love it so much. That's why I use it so much. And you see it's on so many of my videos just because it's my favorite desktop environment. Bloat makes me sad. Me too, DT, me too. Thoughts on Pantheon? I don't have any thoughts on Pantheon. I need to install it. I haven't actually tested Pantheon out at all. Other DEs that I've actually got, like on my laptop, I was using Deepin for a little bit, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't bad. The scaling I thought was pretty good on Deepin, but overall, it almost felt like something was missing there for me, and I just couldn't stick with Deepin. And also, they had, I think, a little bit of controversy as far as privacy goes, but I didn't think anything of it. I used it on my laptop for probably a good couple months, and I've since moved on since then. Yeah, Gnome can look really good, but I really hate Gnome's default look. Like the default layout for GNOME or Gnome is just horrible. Something about it I just really dislike. I think it required way too much customization really to make it look the way I wanted it to look. And then I also really take issue with how they do a lot of the add-ons or plugins for a GNOME with going to like GNOME Look and downloading like the Dash Dock and that type of stuff. I was just like, this feels too much like I'm hacking at this desktop environment, making it be something that it really wasn't meant to be. And that's why I don't really use GNOME at all. But, you know, to each his own. If you like GNOME, hey, whatever floats your boat. Use what's comfortable for you. I'm a Mac guy, so Pantheon fits with me on Elementary OS, even though I mainly use Pop OS now. That's good to know. I mean, I'll definitely check it out. I don't have anything against them for sure. Elementary OS, it's just another Ubuntu spin to me. It looks very pretty, though. I will say it looks very Mac-ish. So, Elementary OS, while I'll never try it, I'll never use it, I get why people use it. It does look very pretty, and it does have that Apple feel to it, for sure. Do you edit your videos on Linux or Windows? Linux all the way. Kdenlive is where I do, and I actually, you'll see it in either, no, not tomorrow's video, but on Sunday's video, you'll see me load up Kdenlive. I'm using app images for the most part to manage Kdenlive because Kdenlive itself can be pretty volatile. So that's why I kind of bounce around a little bit. But as far as the app image goes and Kdenlive itself, I really, really love this. Kdenlive is a fantastic editor. Like, just to give you an idea, I've used Adobe Premiere. I've used a lot of other editors out there. I think I even used Wondershare had one, Filmora. Wondershare Filmora I used for a little bit. I think my very first videos on this channel was made with Filmora, and I was just so slow, and I was not very efficient when I used these paid products. Take the money aspect out, take the Windows Linux aspect out. You give me Premiere, Filmora, and Kdenlive. I choose Kdenlive every time. I've gotten so fast with it. I literally can cut up a video in less than 30 minutes. It's such a great product. I absolutely love it. So if you're looking at making YouTube videos or videos, period, Kdenlive, you can't get much better than that. I do recommend downloading the app image because I don't like installing it because it does crash more than other video editors. And I find using the app image, it doesn't crash as much. And also I can get the newest version that just gets released and just do that. So I think on Sunday's video, I'm doing running programs in Linux. And with the running of programs in Linux, I show you how I take the Kdenlive app image and I drop it into a folder, and then I just rename it kdenlive.appimage and back up my existing version. And that way I can flip-flop back and forth between versions, and I can get whatever's the most stable, and I can also get the newest, latest, and greatest without having to really do too much on my end. It does take up a lot more space doing it this method, but who really cares about hard drive space these days? What about a port of DaVinci Resolve? I hate DaVinci Resolve. I absolutely hate DaVinci Resolve. Not the software itself, like when you get it launched, but DaVinci Resolve in Linux, it's almost like a lie because they say it runs on Linux. And what they should say is, we really suck at packaging this software for Linux. Like, so bad that you have to use an older version of CentOS to really run this product reliably because it's packaged for CentOS. It's just a nightmare to install on Debian. And before anybody links me the RPM to DEB package to install on Debian, just don't even get me started on it. I have an AMD graphics card. It doesn't like AMD graphics cards. It doesn't like my Vega 64. I need to use the proprietary AMD GPU Pro drivers because it doesn't like the open source Mesa drivers. And okay, we're going to be here for 10 minutes of me bitching about DaVinci Resolve. Let's just say I don't like the software. I don't like how it's packaged for Linux. If you really want a professional grade quality video editor, don't use DaVinci Resolve on Linux, or just run a CentOS machine that's built for DaVinci Resolve. But to say it's Linux compatible, they really should say CentOS version 7 point whatever compatible, because it really isn't made for that. And it also needs an Nvidia GPU. There's certain things you need to make a really good DaVinci Resolve rig, but you need to be buying the hardware with DaVinci Resolve in mind, not the other way around. You don't just pick DaVinci Resolve and throw it on your system and it works seamlessly. Or you're the luckiest man in the world, one of the two. All right, I'm done with DaVinci Resolve. Done. Not talking about it anymore. But it does look cool. The software itself looks cool. If you can get it to run properly, I could totally see myself using it. But it doesn't run properly. Oh my god, HSO. I have an RTX 2080. Lordy. That's a nice card, man. But yeah, no, AMD all the way. So like a lot of people ask me, why do you have AMD cards when Nvidia cards perform better than AMD? And the simple explanation behind this is Nvidia uses proprietary drivers and AMD doesn't. And it's all open source now. I mean, a year ago, this is completely different, but now you can use the open source drivers with Mesa, with the Mesa package and all that, and it will perform the same, and in some instances, even better than the proprietary AMD drivers. So the open source scene for AMD GPUs is there, and that's amazing because everything's baked into the kernel. I'm not sitting there going and downloading drivers or having to do a repository for Nvidia like you need to do and then install it through your package manager. You don't need to do any of that for the AMD. You just have the latest kernel, you install Mesa and then DXVK, and off you go. So that's why I love AMD. It's awesome. Debian install. Well, is he just spamming Debian install? There's no longer any more modern day AMD GPU drivers anymore. Good to know. God, I'm so glad they died out. Oh, because I tell you what, those AMD GPU Pro drivers were just a nightmare. They were horribly done. Like Nvidia, let's go back 2 years. Nvidia and AMD, at least when I was on Linux or pulled up Linux desktop, I should say, I remember looking at him and I was like, oh my God, the AMD installer just sucked and the Nvidia installer was far better. The .run file actually works pretty darn good. And that's, obviously don't use the .run file. You probably want to use it from a repository on Nvidia, so don't take me out of context there. But the AMD's always been just a nightmare as far as installing and dealing with when it came to the proprietary driver side. So it was really nice when they dropped that and everything went open source. And we have this wonderful ecosystem today, which is light years better than what it was. And I'm sure the vets like BT and those guys, they could speak to how much it has evolved over the years and how great it has actually been. Yeah, and I'm still kind of checking out like ROCm and some other things that AMD's doing. It's really kind of interesting. It's AMD has come far around. To think that I would be using an AMD graphics card and an AMD CPU in today's world is kind of amazing. Like rewind 5 or 6 years and you had the Excavator processor, which is complete garbage. I mean, it was the worst processor out there. I mean, its performance was like 60% of an Intel counterpart. And as far as the GPUs go, obviously they didn't compete, and they still really don't compete. And it's like they just stopped trying. And what they did instead, and I think this is kind of genius on AMD's part, is said, hey, yes, you can get the best, fastest graphics card out there with like a 2080 RTX, but you're going to pay like $1,400 for it. Or you could buy our graphics card at half that price that gets 80% of the performance. And people are like, well, that's pretty good performance. I only lose about 20% and I save almost half. So that's where AMD's going. They're going for the budget conscious person, not so much the cutting edge person that AMD pretty much has wrapped up anyways. So it's really neat. I really like it. Hey, thanks for the super chat, CK. Chris, remember a new Windows video for my kid's laptop. Remember a new vid for my kid's laptop. All right, man. CK, it's going to happen this next week. When I come look for it, it's going to be minimal Windows 10 install, and I'm going to teach you how to create your own ISO to install Windows 10. And in that own ISO, we're going to slipstream. We're going to strip out all that junk, and it's going to be pretty awesome. So I'm looking forward to that video. I think if any of you guys are still using Windows 10 for a dual boot, you'll really enjoy that because it does make it way faster. But I do take it to the extreme. I'm going to warn you guys. I strip out Windows Search, so if you like searching using Windows, you might not want to remove that option. And I strip out like antivirus. I strip out a lot of stuff that people are going to go, wait a second, I like that built-in Microsoft thing. And my video is really going to be getting rid of the Microsoft out of Windows as much as possible, which is pretty hilarious. So it'll be fun. But with all that, guys, I think I'm going to turn in for the night. It has been fun. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you guys for having all the support, watching the videos, having, getting up to 50,000 subscribers. I never really thought I'd get here. That's pretty amazing. And I'm just looking forward to the future, seeing what all's going to happen, because it's just been such a fun time. And I really, really look forward to it all. So as far as the drunken live stream, DistroTube, it's happening, man. The D2, I'll probably do it when I move into the studio. It's going to be awesome. Now, I already did partial Gen 2 install, so it's not going to be completely blind. But at the same time, we're going to have fun with it, to say the least. Thanks for the super chat, Richard. But with all that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful night. Feel free to hang out or jump on Discord. Either way, I'll jump in there for about 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes after this. Just chat around and whatnot. But we'll have a good time, and I'm gonna do a lot more live streams coming up. I can't wait to show you guys all that. And I'll see you guys in the next one.